Alright, so I just finished watching The Badge, which is a movie that was released in 2002, starring Billy Bob Thornton and Patricia Arquette. It was directed and written by Robbie Henson, and it's about Billy Bob Thornton being a sheriff in a small town and discovering a dead transsexual's body and trying to solve who killed the transsexual. Mona was her name. And all that surrounds it, because at first it seemed like she had been run over by a truck, but it turned out that she had been shot to death. And this movie is very LGBT phobic. It may not have the purpose of being that, but it comes across like that because they really don't have anything to weigh against all the racial, transphobic, homophobic slurs that occur in this movie. And Billy Bob Thornton calls Mona, the transsexual, a freak, a tranny, etc., etc. And Patricia Arquette, who played Mona's wife, she also can't keep things apart. She calls Mona a he and her husband, but she also says she and that she was her wife, so things really don't add up in this movie. And it's, it takes this typical trans theme and puts transgender people as working in sex clubs and as prostitutes and so. And the movie is almost 20 years old now, but it's still not a good depiction of trans people. And there are many movies with this theme. Princessa and Strella, The Crying Game, for example. All movies that have this sort of trans people work as sex workers or prostitutes or whatever. And it's actually very few transgender people who work with that. And unfortunately, people have this stereotype of trans people where they are, gay, sex addicts, and etc. And that's not true. And the movie, I mean, there are some people who call Mona a transsexual and so, but many just call her a chick with a dick or a she-male or all other tranny, all these classic things, ladyboys and all that you can call trans people. That is not rightful and deserved or in any way acceptable to call transgender people. And this movie really should have had some kind of weight against that, because once they get going, it just doesn't stop. The movie itself is a bit convoluted. We really don't have a clear line. First he's there, and then he's there, and then that happened, and then this happened, and then it ended. And everyone was against everyone, and then things just solved themselves in the last few minutes. And yeah, I would not recommend this movie to anyone. Or I would recommend it to people who want to see how transphobia and other such things are. And it's very true in small towns. Especially, backwards redneck, so to say, Bible Belt places where they have a very solid religious foundation and judge people based on that and these values. And that's really not acceptable. But that's how it is with many places in the world. I'm very thankful that I live in Sweden, where it's not as much, even though it happens. I mean, the only people who really have said anything to me are my parents, who call, especially my mother when she has been drunk and so. and I think it's because I generally pass, but my voice doesn't pass, I know that, and I'm still in waiting line to see a voice therapist about this. I also think that, you know, there are things that make trans people not fit into the crowd as well. I mean, especially male to female transsexuals, since they are generally taller, broad shoulders, have an Adam's apple, you know, more masculine facial features, like a big nose, jawline, you know, they may have a male pattern hairline, which I really don't have, a bit maybe. But those are all things that, you know, make it very hard for male to female trans people to blend in. Female to male trans people usually have it easier because the hormones are very good at masculinizing your body. But then in turn, it's very much better to have a vaginoplasty and then phalloplasty. Like you say, it's easier to drill a hole than build a pole. And that's just something for trans people to think of, or everyone to think of. I mean, trans people, if they present themselves as I do, or even more, you know, extrovert and come in high heels, a dress, or so they probably want to be called she and not he or it. And so the same goes for trans men who come dressed, you know, bind their breasts and, you know, take testosterone and grow some facial hair and, you know, wear typical male clothing. They don't want to be called she, they want to be called he. And then, of course, there are a lot of, you know, people who are in between, and so bi-gender, agender, genderqueer, and all that. And it can be hard, you know, to know what kind of pronouns people want to use. But generally, if you're not sure what pronoun to use, ask the person first. So anyway, back to the movie. It could have been better. It really could have been. And I think that it's not positive, you know, to have so many movies where transgender people are victims of crimes, because that's almost every single trans movie. If something happens to the trans people just because they are trans, and that really doesn't paint a realistic picture of how it is in many places in the world. Still, there are places where it is like this, where you can be killed for being transgender, and that's very, very bad, of course. But we really don't need to show trans people being beaten shit out of, as I said in the last movie review about Just Charlie. I mean, why can't we just have some movies that have a positive side to things, not just this negative, trans people get punished and all that shit. So, I'm not recommending this movie. I'm giving it 2 thumbs down, and about a 4 out of 10 in movie rating. Yes, it is still a movie. It's not poorly made in any way. It's the content was not that good. So I'm going to end this review here, and I'll say bye for now. So bye bye.